let me start. So this is the new API, which is gorest.co.in. Again, this is sample, this is not a live API. Okay, this is still a sample API for practice purposes. As you can see here as testing and prototyping, right? But this is not an kind of API where anyone can go and hit or get a response. To use this API, you need an account with this. Why do you need an account? That I'll come to that later. But first of all, let me tell you how will you start with this. If you want to automate this, let me log out from here. So you click on this link and then you go to login. And in the login part, you have three options. Either you can sign up, or you can use existing your Facebook, your Gmail, or your GitHub ID to access this specific API. What I have done is I have used GitHub. Okay, so if I click on GitHub, it asks me for some username and password, which I've already added there. I've already authenticated there. So it's not asking for it again. So it has logged me in. So I have an account inside this website. If you want to automate this, and everyone has to automate this, because that's what you discussed prior to this meeting, everyone has to do it. So you all have to create an account in this. Okay. Second thing is, by the way, if anyone is not any questions in between, you just stop me and ask. So don't just say, okay, I'll ask later, I'm not getting this, but still you are still being silent. Don't do that, please. Otherwise the lecture which I gave has no importance, or it just landed onto the stones. So ask. That's the only thing I'm looking at. So let me explain this API first to you guys. This is an API which is again a REST API where you have various methods. So we have get, we have post, we have patch or put, and we have delete. So these are the primary methods which any API has. Or maybe moving further, let me again, because people are asking this, let me again try to tell how the API works basically. Okay, so let me do one thing. Let me share and whiteboard here. So let me tell you in a very general way how an API works. Okay, and what is in reality and real time how things work. So what I'll do is I'll create some diagrams here. So let's say this is, let me draw it in a better way. Let me erase this one. Let me draw, this is your, let's say, front end, and this is, let's say, your server. Okay, this is your front end. This is your server. Everyone knows what a server is, right? Server is where your website is hosted. People also say backend, people say API, people can say database. They all comes under the server. Okay, now inside this server you will have three things, broadly speaking. Again, 1, 2, and 3 components you can say. Okay, now one of that component is actually your API. So one of that component is API. So let's say this is your API component. Okay, now this API component actually go and talks with your database. It talks to your DB. I can say this, I might say this is for example, this component is your some backend code, something, or some port, or some other components. I'm not really bothered about this. All I'm saying is, when your front end tries to ask some information from the server, from here, the server listens to that request, it processes it, it internally calls these APIs, this API calls this DB, then DB actually go ahead and responds, to API sends it back to the some port or server or some backend component, and then this backend component This backend component sends the request back to the front end. What is front end? Front end is your browser where your HTML code is. That is how everything works in a API architecture. How this works is, I mean, if we take an example of Amazon.com, for example. So Amazon has this list. Okay, if you go, let me go to the Amazon website. So if I go to Amazon website here, amazon.in, when we go and search for, let's say, mobile, okay, and we search it. So you see something is going on, some discussion with the server is happening. So front end is talking to the server is doing something, the server is responding it back. Some information is it sending it back. I'm not sure how this Amazon system is being developed. All I'm saying is trying to give you an analogy. What might have happened that when you search for mobile, the front end, this HTML front end sent a GET request to the server. Okay, that server took that GET request and it understood what exactly it needs, what exactly the front end is requesting. It will call the relevant API. API will go to the DB and DB will give the information. In this case, the product. So right now I'm searching for product mobile. So in the GET request, this information was sent with the GET request that the user requires mobile. List of mobiles. So mobile information will go to the server will talk to API will talk to DB. In DB the query will be fired that send all the mobiles with all the details of price, when can we get it, all the description, how the reviews, lot of things. So all that information is API fetched from DB, converted that to JSON, and it returned it back to the port from where it was being heard, and from there a HTTP packet was created, and then that HTTP packet was sent back to the UI front end. And then HTTP packet has two components, body and as well as header. So in the header, the information was 200. In the body part, it was the JSON. JSON has all this information, that what is the mobile price, description, whether it's sponsored, what is the image, everything is part of JSON. And then that JSON is being used and parsed using within HTML so that you can get this view. Okay. If I go back to my old share, which was by whiteboard. So this is what is happening behind the scene. Okay. Now what actually happens is, let me save this. What actually happens is,
sir,
yeah, yes, Amit.
सर फ्रंट एंड पे जो HTML रहता है, मतलब वहाँ जो क्लाइंट अपन
Amit, your voice break. Your voice is breaking, Amit. I'm not able to hear you. No, still I'm not able to hear you, Amit. Can you repeat the entire question? Okay, I don't know if you are still in the call, Amit. So I'll move on. Maybe once you join, you can ask again, if you're listening, of course. So this front end, if you're talking about this front end and this is a server, right? Now, what we are doing as a tester, if we talk about it. So as a tester, we are trying to automate the front end using Selenium. We are really not bothered when we talk about UI automation using Selenium. We are not really bothered about how this interaction is happening. So we're not bothered about this part. This part we're not bothered about at all when we are doing UI automation. But when it comes to the API automation, and we do need to validate API as well, because you can never be sure whether the what front end is calling is also exactly the same if we go and call the API. In the sense, if front end is calling the API, is it sending the same response if we go and test it separately? Secondly, API testing is relatively simple and faster. So for example, if front end development team is different and API development team is different, we need to test both the things. So front end can be tested separately, back end can be tested, API can be tested separately, so that we can test the system faster. Third advantage of doing this API thing is, if everyone knows there is a concept called as agile pyramid. So this is agile pyramid. Underlying layer is unit. Then about that we have an API layer, and then we have a UI layer. This is UI layer. This is API. Let me just write it like this: API, and this is your unit. Okay. Agile simply dictates that there has to be more validations in UI compared to the more validations in unit test layer than API, and then more on API than UI. So you see the trend. That's why the trend is going towards automation, API automation. Why? Because agile dictates it. If someone is claiming to be an agile, following agile, they really have to focus more towards API and less on UI, more on API. So more focus. That's why companies are putting into API, and that is the reason we are learning API automation, right? Because the more of people are creating their applications using architecture is API based, and if architecture is API based, API has to be tested. So you tested API separately, you test front end separately, and then you do some integration test as a part of your UI tests. Okay. Now tell me what exactly you didn't understand in this. What is it which you are not getting, and which is stopping you from understanding why we are doing this? What is an API? API is in the server, front end is here. So far you have been doing only this automation using Selenium, but we want to do this as well now. So what it is which you are not getting? Any questions so far?
हेलो सर, एपीआई और अजाइल का मुझे समझा नहीं है, मतलब यूज ज्यादा अजाइल में एपीआई का ही क्यों करते हैं?
Okay, I'll tell you that. So let me share the desktop again. Let me go here. Let me Google agile pyramid. Agile testing pyramid. So I don't know if you guys have seen this. This is a very, very famous or very important diagram. Let me open perhaps this one. Let me open this one, for example. Yeah, so this is a diagram. Okay. Previously, when in a complete SDLC cycle, life cycle, mostly testing was happening on the UI layer. What do you mean by UI layer? The developer is developing something, it is deploying it. You as a tester is actually is testing it. Where will you test it? On the UI, right? That is what you will do. You will test on the UI. The problem is when you focus all of your efforts on the UI side of things, the chances of finding defect will be less. The chances of losing a defect will be high. The chances of finding a defect early is also will be less, because you are trying to find something at the last stage. UI is like the last stage of any automation or any development work. First and foremost, you develop DB, you develop APIs, you develop backend code, and then you start developing the UI part. So UI usually comes at the last, and the moment you are trying to catch a defect at the later stages, and the cost of fixing those defects are also high. So the whole idea, the whole mindset shift of the industry happened, I think 10 years back, where they said agile has to be introduced, and agile has this principle to test the system at multiple levels, at multiple layers. And that's how they come up with this diagram. So this diagram is called as agile pyramid diagram. And here you see the bottommost layer is automated unit tests. So here they have written that you need to write unit tests. So developer, when writing their code, the first level of check they should do is writing unit test. Then the second layer, which is automated API test, automated integration test, or automated component test. In this case, since our architecture is API, so we'll say automated API test. So the idea is you should do more unit test, then little bit less API, then even little bit less GUI. So GUI, if you notice here, let's say if in a project you have 1000 GUI tests, then you should have 3000 API tests, and you should have 5000 unit tests. Previously it was reversed. Previously people used to write less unit test, less API test, and more GUI test. So the whole model was reversed in when it comes to the agile, because the idea is simple. You tell me, for example, you are creating a laptop. Okay, now if you are creating a laptop, you are a developer of laptops, so what you will do, you will find chips, you will find lot of transistors, you will create a motherboard, then you will do lot of things inside, you will do mixing and matches of the circuits, you create lot of circuits, and then finally you will create a laptop and you give it to me, and let's say I'm a tester. Okay, now you have created the laptop, everything is done, you are giving it to me, and now I have started finding issues in the laptop, right? So the cost of fixing those laptops will be higher, because then I'll tell you this is a problem, then you take it, then you open the laptop again, then you change the circuit again, then you join it back, and then you again give it to me, then again I'll find the defect. Okay, so the original, the main mindset shift is then that while you are developing something, I should test the system then and there. So while you were developing the circuitry, you should call me and say, see, I have created this, can you test it? So I can write some test for it. So whatever defects were there in the circuitry, I could immediately identify and you can fix it. Okay, so original idea is find it soon. Okay, and so that the cost of fixing the defect will be less. So it should not come at the top layer. Defects should be identified and fixed at the underlying layer only. Because if something is going wrong in the UI, the culprit is the backend code, not the UI. Okay, for example, this is an Amazon website. I write amazon.in. I'm writing here mobile. Okay, the result is coming. Let's say if I'm writing mobile and nothing is coming here. So you tell me where the actual defect is. You tell me, Pooja, where the actual defect will be. UI में आएगा कि backend में होगा?
Backend में होगा sir, अगर mobile.
Right. So point is, if I'm typing mobile and I'm not getting the list, in all likelihood the defect is in the API. So why not just test the API first, so that whatever defects are in the API I can fix it, so that it will not cascade back to the UI. UI में केवल UI वाले defects दिखने चाहिए, not the API वाले defects. So that's the main reason why we are doing this. Getting it?
Yes sir.
Okay. Any more questions regarding this? Why we are doing this and what is the connection of Agile with API? Okay. All right, guys. Give me 2 minutes. I'll be back. Okay, guys. So where was I? Yes. So this Agile and API, this is the connection. So if any questions still, you can still go and add a question in the WhatsApp group which we have, and I'll try to answer those maybe tomorrow. Okay, so what we do next is, this is the, let me open the page of this API. This is the API. First and foremost, you have to create an account here the way I did. Okay, so maybe I'll just tell it again. Login, you click here. I've already added my details, so it's directly logging me in. In your case, it will ask for some authentication for you have to enter your GitHub username and password. I guess everyone has GitHub and username passwords. Add it there and it will give you an access here. So once you reach this page, you'll see a specific item here called as access token. This is an authentication token which you require if you want to get some response from or any response from this API. Why we need this? Let me come here and maybe this is the area. I want you guys to read it. Okay, idea is simple. The previous API which we were using, it was open to all, so that means anyone can go and hit it, right? But APIs has to be controlled using some authentication, so that it should not happen that anyone is coming and hitting it and it's giving the response. Okay, so some level of authentication has to have in any kind of API. Okay, so that you cannot directly access it. So for that, these kind of authentications are usually part of APIs. Nearly all the APIs The actual live APIs which you're going to use will be having some level of authentications, right? So authentication again can be of multiple types, right? There can be simple authentication, basic authentication, OAuth 1, OAuth 2, these kind of authentications usually are there. Okay. I will send a link for you guys to study what these authentications are. You don't have to go into very detail of it, but yeah, some understanding on what kind of authentication, how authentication works, what is an authentication in general. Yeah, you should know. So I'll send that link. I'm not explaining and everything in detail in this particular session. So the only difference between this or the starking difference between this and this is the authentication. This was open to all, so anyone can go and hit it. But this API is not open to all. So this requires some level of authentication. Now, next, what we'll do is we'll try to understand what this API is and what are the responses, what kind of information this API holds. So this is simple API wherein it has a list of users. And good part with this API is it also has a view on what kind of database it has. So if I go and click on users, this is the database. This is coming from the data from the database. And this is how they are telling us this is the information which is present in the database. And to access this information, they have given these APIs. So if you want to get all the users from it, this is what you're going to use. So you're going to hit this API. Sorry, this is the server name. This will be the endpoint. So this is the users. This user is the endpoint at which once you hit this, it will return you all the users. What's the typical way of doing this? We can, the way we were doing earlier. So if I do this, let's see what happens. So it is giving me an error called as success false 401 authentication. This is the status code message as authentication failed. Name unauthorized, values is your request was made with invalid credentials. This is what I wanted to highlight when I was talking about this authentication. That means you cannot directly access this endpoint. You have to, and this is something similar to username password, guys. When in Selenium, in UI, you have to enter username password, only then the HTML will tell you some information, right? Same thing here. You want to get some information from this API, you need to tell or authorize. You have to be authorized, or you need to tell some credentials before it will allow you to, before it will respond to your request. But the good point is the API is still responding. So API said, I will not entertain your request because your authentication failed. So in this case, this is a response which API sent. It's not something which some server sent. So of course, server has APIs. So API is responding that your authentication is failed. So in this case, also API is responding with this, and this also constitutes a test case. A test case will be if a wrong credentials will be sent, the API should respond this. It's a negative test case, for example, and it should pass, by the way. It's not negative test case fails. This is what I think someone was saying this. Negative test case pass. If negative test case is failing, that means the functionality is failing. Okay, anyway, so what I'll do next is, so we'll not go to every detail of it for now. What we will focus on this user. So what is the first step? So first step towards testing this API is that we will try to hit this API with the right credentials and with the right endpoints and see what's coming, right? And unfortunately, you cannot do this from here because it is not directly accessible. You need to find a way to, enter some credentials. So what we're going to do is we are going to use the Postman. Okay, and this time I'll tell you something new about Postman. I'll talk about collections. Collections in Postman are nothing but a way of, as the name suggests, the way of storing the requests for a specific API. So what I'll do, I'll click on new collection. Here I'll give the name as, I already created one, but I'll create another. Go REST API collection set. I'll give this name. I'll write this holds the list of all the APIs from Go REST API. Then it is asking me for some authorization from here. I will not give it here. I'll give it later, but right now all I need to do is to create it. So this will just create a simple folder for me basically. So I have created this specific folder, okay, collection. Now I can start adding my requests in this. So let me close all the old ones. I mean, there's a lot many opened requests here. Close all tabs. Don't save. Don't save. Don't save. Okay, there are too many. Okay, now I'll go here and click on add requests. Here the request name will be, I'll write get users, and in here I will click on save to go request collection set. As soon as I do this, I will get to see a request inside this collection. As I said, it's not no rocket science. Requests collections are simple. It's just a folder structure under which you can save your requests. Next, what I'll do is I will go here and I will copy this server, right? So this is the server. I want to hit this. Then this is the endpoint. If I hit this endpoint, I will get the response. So let's do this much only. I'll click on send and I will see the same message, which is authentication failed. Your request was made with invalid credentials. That means I need a credentials. The good part is the moment I logged in, that means I was assigned a credential. So I'll go to API access. What I did is I went to my profile, API access here, and this is the access token for me, right? So I will copy this access token. So this access token itself is giving me authority over this API. That means if I hit this API using this access token, the API will respond the way it should respond for any genuine user. So where should I mention it? So we are in the request part, that is a get. In the request part, I will have a tab called as authorization. Here I will go and I'll select the OAuth 2.0. Why? Because I will paste it here. And what will I do is, why I am selecting OAuth 2? Because there are different ways to send an access token, OAuth 2 and HTTP basic auth. Okay, the API developer is telling me there are two ways you can do it, and that is why I'm using this. Again, I will say I said this. I will send some reading items, some tutorials on what this is, what is OAuth 2, and I'm sure you must have used it many times. OAuth 2 authentication, you must have used it. When sometimes there is access. Even we did this in this specific application. Like, how did you sign up? Sometimes you can sign up to a specific application using your Gmail. Log in via Gmail, log in via GitHub, log in via Facebook, right? You must have used it many times. That actually happens using OAuth, open authentication systems, right? So I recommend everyone to read about it. I'll send the links. But for now, let me go back to the original example which I was giving. So in this, I need to mention the access token. Access token, I can use OAuth 2. That's the reason I have selected here OAuth 2.0. And this specific key I can only get once I log into this. So API access, I'll click here and I'll get this access key. That is what I have entered here. Fair enough. Now, after this, if I go and click on send again, now the server is the API responding success true, code 200, message okay, everything worked as expected. And in the result, it is giving me all the information. You know what this information? What is this information? This information is what is coming from the database, right? This is the database. This is the information which is being fetched by the API. API fetched this information, converted that into a JSON, and it responded into our client, which is in this case Postman. And this is the response which I'm getting here. So what this data which you see here is actually this data. So you see Daisha, the same data is coming here, ID 131, ID 1. This is a database. But API did this perfect job of fetching the values from database via query, converting that to a JSON, putting that JSON into the body of the response HTTP, and the response is being received by this Postman, and it has displayed here. Any questions until now on what's happening? Any questions, guys? Please open up. No? Amit, you are asking something, then your voice broke, your connection was lost. Do you want to ask again?
यस सर, वो मैं ये पूछ रहा था कि वो अमेजोन का जो पेज था ना,
Yes.
उसमें जब अपन प्रोडक्ट सर्च करते हैं तो वो एपीआई मतलब सर्वर पे आता है, वहां से रिस्पांस लेके आता है,
राइट?
तो ये सब ये क्या एचटीटीपी रिक्वेस्ट होती है, या जो क्लाइंट होता है अपना ब्राउजर वो रिक्वेस्ट चाहता है कि जो अमेजोन का सर्वर रहता है उसकी एपीआई होती है अमेजोन की?
Let me go back to the diagram which I drew. See, this is a diagram. This is front end. Can you see?
मतलब यहाँ पे अमेजोन की वेबसाइट है ये फ्रंट एंड, ठीक है?
Yes, this is your Amazon website. Now,
Hmm.
the code of calling the API is present here. So once you do something, there is a request. The request will be created in HTTP format, and the request will go to the server. Server will receive the request. API will read it. API will understand what kind of request is that, and it will, based on the request, it will fetch the database. It will fetch the information from the database. If it is a GET, if it is a POST, then it will insert the values into the database. And based on the what is the request, so this red is a request. This blue
Yes.
is the response. Sorry for drawing this bad. Okay, so this is a request. This is RQ. This is response. And same thing is happening inside also. There's a request, then response sent back to the front end. So once you get the response, the HTML displays there. Okay, so effectively what was present in the database here, in a database is actually being shown here. Database information is being displayed in the front end. That is what is happening behind the scene.
हाँ सर, ये मुझे समझ में आ गया, बस ये मुझे रिक्वेस्ट वाला पार्ट समझ में नहीं आया कि जो अपन मतलब एचटीटीपी रिक्वेस्ट होता है तो वो मतलब कौन भेजता है, वो अमेजोन की वेब होता है कि अपना जो ब्राउजर क्लाइंट रहता है वो?
You see, this is the front end, right? Front end doesn't mean it only has HTML. It also has client server code, client side code. For example, JavaScript, right?
Okay.
Front end ke behind the scene, in the front end itself, the JavaScript is working, and JavaScript is creating this request and requesting. For example, Ajax. What is Ajax? Ajax is also the same thing. Okay, Ajax. There's a front end in the HTML. HTML is what you see. The HTML is what you actually see. But behind the scene, within the browser, behind the scene, within the browser, not in the server, within the browser, there are code, JavaScript code, script code, right? And that code is actually taking the information from the UI as what you have entered, and it will convert that that request from the user into a proper HTTP packet, HTTP request. And that HTTP request, it's shot back to the server. So what you see here is not sent by HTML, it is sent by the JavaScript which is residing inside HTML. This JavaScript this is inside HTML. If I right click on this and if I do an inspect, so this is what you see, right? This is your div. This is HTML. This is the way by which user can interact with the page, right? But a lot of things are happening behind the scene. All these scripts. Now, one of these scripts must be doing that job of sending the information, creating the request and sending it back to the server. Okay, these all are many scripts in this page. The many scripts. You see this code. This is not what you see, right? This is simple code.
Yes.
This code is actually responsible for creation of those things, those requests, and firing the request HTTP call to the server. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So where was I? Let me go back. Okay. Did you see what I think last time? Okay. I think you didn't see that. Did you watch this when I was explaining the HTML? I think the screen was not shared then. I think only whiteboard was shared. I'll talk about it again. So this is the code, right? So what you see is an HTML here. what you see is the plain span data, all those things, right? But if you go and check head section, if you in the head section, you see this script. All this is code. This is code. This is the code which is responsible for, hitting the server and bringing back the response and all those things. This is jQuery, jQuery. This is JavaScript. This is also done by Node.js and all those. There are different UI technologies which do these things.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So next thing is, I'll go back to my Postman example. So this is where I was. Now there are different endpoints, the different ways by which you can do it. So this is, go open the page, right? I'll go to home. So the developer of the API has actually made this document. So see, if you, as a tester, you are a tester, you will not know what's happening with the API unless you see an API documentation. What you see right now here is an example of an API documentation. Using it by the way of API documentation, the developer of the API is telling the testers or the other developers that what that API offers, what are the endpoints of that API. So these are endpoints. So this is how it is telling us what are the things which you can do with this API. It is saying, if you do this get request on this endpoint, it will give you a list of users. If you do this get and if you pass this query parameter. So I think you also must have noticed in your experience that sometimes in the URL there is a question mark and some information. This is called as query parameter. Like this is how you are telling the server. So if let's say if I hit this, if I let's say hit this here, so this is how I am telling the server that try to find the data whose first name is John. Okay, and I'm putting it after question mark. So this will be my complete URL. So that's how the API will know what information, what kind of information is the user require. Okay, so if I click on send here, it will say result as null. That means it couldn't find anything which has first name as John. How about we give him an actual data? So if I go to users, let's say I find this Daisha here, send, and now I'm getting the information of Daisha Williamson, female, email, phone number, all the information. And the few more information is there which is not right now appearing in this table, but all that information is present in the database and from where it is coming. Okay, so basically it has found two Daisha Williamson and Daisha Leffler. Okay, so it has found two entries with first name as Daisha. What if I only want this first name and this last name? What I'll do is I can do one more thing here. So I can, in the query parameter only, I can write here like this. I can write here last name. This is an end, right? So last name is equal to Williamson. If I send, now I am getting only one entry when Daisha Williamson. Okay, the point is, how will I know what to write here? Right, this might be originating in many minds right now. How will I know this? You cannot know this. This is not true for all APIs. The developer of the API will tell you that this is how this API works. These are called as functionalities of the API. Okay, so how will I know what are the things API is capable of doing? I can only know this by reading the documentation of that API which developer has told me. So this is the documentation of this API. This is a documentation. Using this, reading this only, then I will able to know what kind of functionalities or features this API is offering and how to call it. That how part, what to write, what is the endpoint, what to write, what can be the parameters, what are the query parameters. All that information is developer is going to tell you. So any API automation project or any API testing project, the developer will tell you what to do. Right now, what we are doing is we are not doing any automation. We are trying to understand this API, what this API is doing. And then based on these endpoints, based on the functionalities of this API, we are going to write our test cases. For example, our test case can be, first test case can be, okay, let's hit this endpoint and see result is coming. I'll see, okay, result is coming. Then I can say, okay, if I want to search for a specific ID, for example, ID 133. If I write there 133, am I getting that specific endpoint? So that specific data. So yes, I'm only getting one entry for this ID. Then third test case, what if I am putting some invalid value? What value will find? I'll get not found. Third test case, this is a negative test case. Fourth test case, this one. If I'm looking for a specific data, will I get it? Yes, I'm getting 2. What if I want to add to one more condition? Yes, only one entry. Or a more valid case will be, how can I get all the, let's say, gender as female? Can I get all the list, all the users who are female? So yes, I'm getting all the who are female, all the list, all the items of the all the ladies are coming, right? Now next is, what if I want to find all the entries whose gender is female but status is active? So I'll write here status is active, send. So now I'm getting all the list of all the ladies whose status is active and not inactive. So these kind of scenarios I'm creating, right? This is how I'm testing it, whether the functionalities of the API is responding the way it should respond, right? These basically constitute my get requests. I can also do stupid things here, right? So I can write this. Let's see what happens. So I'm getting nothing. So this is a negative test case. All right. Okay, guys. Any questions so far on these get requests? No? Okay. So next what I'll do is, so I think it's already 4. I'll take one more, I will take 5 to 10 minutes to explain how to do this specific thing in using Rest Assured in Java. Okay. So what I'll do, I'll quickly go back here. Let me close all for now. So what I'll do, go rest, no, here. So I actually created one file here, but I'll not use it. I will create another one. So I'll go here, I'll click on class and I will write here I'll write here go REST API get requests. Okay. And let me not mark it a get request, simple go REST API, only this much. Let me keep it this much. Test case, perhaps one more entry. Perhaps here. You see, go REST API finish. So I have a class now, and here what I'll do, I'll write here public void test case 01 get request. Now you just watch how I'm creating this test case. Okay, so I'll write here test JUnit. I'll import the JUnit one. Then I'll start writing. You remember what we need to do, because we have to use Rest Assured. We need to do some imports. So I'll do import. Then io.restassured. Let me copy it from the previous one. Sorry, let me copy it from here. So I need these 2 imports, or rather these as well for now. So I will copy this. So I need this Rest Assured. Basically, I need this for now, Rest Assured, and perhaps matches as well to validate something. So I'll remove this. I don't need this. So I only need these 2 imports for now. What I'll do, I'll start writing the code. First is given dot base URI. Dot base URI. What is base URI? The name of the server. So in our case, name of the server is this. This is also, you can fetch it from here. This is the name of the server. So I will go back. I will create it at the top so that I could reuse it. String server. This is my server name. Server name is typically where everything is hosted. Now here I will write server. Then second part will come for dot when dot get. So I will go here in the get part. I will write this because this is the endpoint I'm interested in. Right now I want to hit this. So I will write here. This is the endpoint. So given dot base URI as server, when I do a get using this endpoint, then dot then, or rather I will just return it first. So as as string, and I'm returning this in a response object. Sorry, it's not response object. Like this. This is a response object. Import. Then I will just do a response dot as string. So right now what I'm doing is I'm trying to print this, as simple as that. So if you remember in the old example, the previous example which we did for previous one, that's what we did, right? We wrote given dot base URI, the name of the server dot when do a get, then we need to assert something, right? So given when then statement, the same thing we are doing here. So this is the given. Let me, if I try, I break it into multiple steps. When and don't get. So given this is a base URI, when I do a get on this, I will get a response, right? So if I go and run this, right click, run as JUnit test. So let's see what happens. So you see meta success is false, code 401 message authentication failed, right? We saw this and we also know how to fix it. That means we need an authentication token. So irrespective of who is calling it, in this case, if I was hitting this, in this case, the client who was requesting for it was the HTML browser. In this case, the requester was Postman. The client was Postman. This is what this Postman was calling the API. In this case, our client is Java or Rest Assured in this case, right? So client can be anyone, but the API will have no reservation for any client. So if API will respond the way it is requested for, if you are using any client, it doesn't matter to the API. API will still respond and still expect specific information from the client, whoever the client can be anyone. It can be your Java, it can be your SOAP UI, it can be your Postman, it can be your HTML. So in this case, what we need to do is to put some authentication. So authentication, so you have given part, you have when part, you have get part, right? So if you want to send some header, so if I go back to the previous example, so if in few cases, and I think in the post example, we wanted to send some headers also and body as well. So that usually what you did, given dot base URI, and you also called a method called as headers. Inside that you gave some headers, right? And then you also mentioned some body part. So body part you mentioned in the when part, right? But headers went inside the given part. So what we're going to do here is, let's see, in after base URI, if I put a dot and write here auth, right? So this auth is a method, or this is also an authentication, it returns an authentication specification or part of request specification. This auth method is responsible for putting in the authentication token. So if after auth, if you do a dot, it will ask you what you wish to do, what kind of authentication you need, right? So there are few different kind of authentications, network authentications. One is basic, then you have NTLM, you have OAuth, you have OAuth 2, right? So I'm going to use OAuth 2, and here I'm going to put some access token, which I will define at the top. I'll write here access token equal to, my access token is here. Okay, and access token I will give here, right? So now I have a given where base URI is this and authentication token is this. And when I do a get, I should get a response. So if I run this now, let's see what happens. If I do this now I'm getting the response. So it has sent me the response, success true, everything worked as expected, and the whole response. And now I can go ahead and write my, further code of, writing then dot assert that dot body. First assert that should be assert that dot status code is coming as 200. Then body, in the body argument, in the argument I'll put the JSON path. This is what I explained last time, right? So inside the then assert that you first mentioning status code is coming as 200. Then in the body I need to check I should be checking few specific things, right? So I should be writing here that if I'm sending this information here, like send, I should get a meta object. Inside that meta object there are few fields, and then we have a result object, right? So I will check here meta dot success is true, so I should check these values. So I should write underscore meta dot success is coming as true, then in the body, or rather actually not directly this, I need to write equal to, it's a Hemcrest matcher which I need to put here. So I'll write here true. Where this equal to is coming, it's coming from this Hemcrest matcher. If I right click, if I click here dot, I get to see all the methods available here. So equal to is coming from here. This is equal to, okay? So whatever matches I would need, what kind of things I can do with this Hemcrest, all the methods are coming here. So you can use all these methods to do stuff. For example, if you want to check that all let's say you want to check in some values coming inside an array or array list, you can use has item in array, all these values, all these methods. These are actually called as matchers, and Rest Assured is built on these matchers. Rest Assured uses these matchers to write validations as a part of the statement, or the part of this request call, which is this. So what I'll do, I have done till this equal to. Then next thing I will do is the body. Then inside this I will write perhaps the code and message also I would like to check. So I'll write here underscore meta dot code. So dot meta dot code, I will write here should be equal to 200. Then again dot body, and then the message. So I'll write here body underscore meta dot message, and I will again call equal to, and this time I will pass here this information, because this is what I want to validate whether the response is having these strings, right? Then so I have checked this component, so I don't need to really check this much now. Okay, I have checked these many values that this is coming, and I am also checking the status here, right? So this status code is checking, I'm checking from here, and then the other things I'm checking from inside the body using this body. Now what else I can check? I can also check at the information which is coming, right? This is the information which is coming in the result section is also right. So to keep things simple, maybe for today's session, let's not do it, only run till this much. So in tomorrow's session, what we'll do is we'll kind of do the automate the further scenarios. So let me give it a shape. So here I will write dot extract dot response. So it will, this extract dot response actually is part of then statement. So if I want to validate something as well as I also would like to have fetch the response, I will write this extract and response. Otherwise it is no need for this. So this is the response. If I run this now, run. So it has passed, it has checked everything. If I want to see whether it is failing with the wrong value, let's say I'm writing this here, so it will now fail it. So it is failing this, and but this code doesn't match, right? So it is failing it. Now, how many test cases I can write? As I said, we can write many test cases in this. So if I go and write one more test case before I call the session off, if I write one more test case, so I will create a test case, a negative test case. Negative test case will be like this. So test case will be test case number 2, get request, or I will write negative test case, get request, invalid token. This time what I'll do, I will deliberately will enter an invalid token. I will write here invalid token, some wrong value here. Okay. Now, if I'm sending some invalid token, what I'm expecting from the server is it should check. Let's say if I simulate this from here, let's say some invalid token, and if I click on send, what I'm expecting is this. So I'm expecting code as 401, message as this, and the result I need this, right? So that is what I would validate. So I'll write here meta success is false. So I'll write this time I'll validate false. Meta code should be 401. So I'll write here 401. Here message I will write authentication failed. I'll write here authentication failed. Then in the result, I will also put some more validation. So I will write here few more. I'll write here meta, not meta. So I'll write here result and name, and result and message. Result dot message. So should be coming like this. And I need unauthorized here. Unauthorized here. Right. So if I go and run this test case, the full test case again, let's see what happens. So if I go right click, run as JUnit test. So first test case should be passed and second test case should also be passed. So this is my negative test case and it has passed. Okay. Why? Because I am sending invalid information and I am also expecting these values. I'm expecting these values. This is what I'm validating. So I don't know again, I'll go back to the question which was originally asked, that my negative test case should fail, right? It's not that. Negative test case means you're trying to break the system and you're expecting, if you're trying to insert wrong values, the system is correcting you. So you are sending some wrong information from here and the system is telling you that this is not right. That is what you will validate, that the system should tell you that you are not right. So here in this case, system is telling us, and that's why test case is passed. You're sending wrong information, and system is saying to you that success is false, code is 401. It is also telling you authorization failed, and that all that information. Okay, so we have come to the end of the session. Any questions so far?
Sir, when we automate the API test cases, so first we need to run all those test cases with Postman. Then only we will get to know na ki kya हमें check करना exactly.
Exactly. So you just don't go and start automating things. That's wrong. Once you get this API, let's say you're getting this API, app developer is saying that this is the API. So first of all, you will go and test it in Postman, because only then you will understand what kind of endpoints are there, what are the responsive I'm getting. So based on these testing, you can design the test cases. Once the test cases are designed, only then you go here and start automating things. Right? How would I know what kind of information I'm getting? What should I write here? How would I know before I actually go and do this? Without doing this in Postman, I cannot directly write it. As simple as that.
Okay, so testing with the Postman is a kind of manual testing, or
it is considered to be it is a manual testing. You can say it's a manual testing of API. Postman is not an automation. I mean, you can automate things in this as well. It's not that you cannot do it. You can do, but actual automation testing is usually people say when they are doing it inside Java environment using Rest Assured and all. So this is a example. Postman people use to say that this is a manual automation effort. Sorry, manual testing effort.
Okay.
All right. Anything else, guys? Any more questions? Please ask. I mean, if you're not getting it, I mean, how will I know? I will not know. I will assume that you got it. So that is why I always kind of shout at you on you guys that you're not asking. I mean, you are not getting it. You should ask. Until unless you will not ask, my assumption will be you are getting it. And when you're not doing the assignments and later you're telling me that sir, I couldn't get it, I was not understanding it, then it doesn't make sense to me. I will still shout at you because you didn't ask the time when you should ask. So if you have any questions, ask now. If you're not getting now, if you're not having any questions now, you can post on the group. And this time from now onwards, I don't want any silence in the group. You need to shout things out. If you have any problem, you just bring it up on the group. Okay.